I'm sorry.
Second.
Everybody in favor of adopting the minutes of the meeting held August 2nd?
Aye.
Motion carries. Public comment period for items not on the agenda. I don't think we have any public comments. Okay, we'll jump right to the good stuff. We have a public hearing for a preliminary plat request by Santo LLC for a 109-acre lot residential subdivision on a 37.624 acre parcel located at 0 Ivy Street, Waynesboro, Virginia, tax map number 4-1-28A. And I will invite staff, Alison, to the podium.
Okay, so the first presentation tonight is for the Hannah's Ridge subdivision, which is a preliminary major subdivision plat for a 37-acre parcel. This parcel is located in the northern part of the city off of Ivy Street. You actually saw this one earlier this year for rezoning. And it's just north of the new Ivy Commons subdivision. So the property is 37.624 acres. Right now, in its present state, it's vacant, mostly open fields with some trees and brush. It is zoned RS7. It was rezoned from RS12 earlier this year. And the comprehensive plan designation is low-density residential. So the current zoning is the RS7, which is our single-family residential small lot designation. The district allows for single-family residential with a maximum density of 6 units per acre and a minimum lot size of 7,000 square feet. The property, the application tonight is using the conventional development option, which means that the property is going to be divided up into larger lots. And the nature of the request, it is a major subdivision preliminary plat, and it will be by right with no waivers. And by right means that the city has no discretion to deny it as long as the applicant has satisfied all the requirements of the subdivision and zoning ordinances. The plat, which I'll be showing you here in just a moment, is showing 109 single-family residential lots, and the lot sizes range from 7,143 square feet to 21,387 square feet. And the density of this is about 3.5 units per acre. And in addition to the lots, the plat shows about 9.791 acres of open space, with some of that doubling as stormwater management facilities, and also about 6 acres of right-of-way, which includes the streets and sidewalks. So this is a look at the overall plat. The subsequent pages are going to show it sort of halved, but I wanted to show you what it looks like together so you'd have a better idea of how it all fits. The main entrance for the subdivision will be off of Ivy Street right here. You see the road sort of wrap around. There will be a secondary entrance down here to the Ivy Commons subdivision as well, in addition to some three connections that could be potentially connected in the future should the parcels develop more densely on the northern side, and then you also have an eastern road connection here on the eastern side should that parcel develop any farther. But so here is sort of the top half of that plat. Shows it just a little more closer in. It doesn't really, it's kind of hard to see it, but then here is the lower part as well. And here's where you can see a lot of the sort of open space mixed with the stormwater management facilities, sort of right here, and then along Ivy Street right here. And this is another page in the preliminary plat packet. It shows the streets a little better, along with the open space. And so here again, give you an idea of what it will look like. Okay, so because this property is zoned RS7 and it's surrounded by RS12 zoned properties, a Class A buffer is going to be required along the boundaries of the RS12s. And a Class A buffer is 10 feet wide, and it requires 2 canopy trees, 2 understory trees, and 12 shrubs for every 100 linear feet. The plat is, those red lines are showing the landscaping easement where that buffer will be provided. Even though the Ivy Commons subdivision is zoned for RS12, the vegetative buffer isn't required along that boundary because the width of the lots in the Hannah's Ridge subdivision are equal to or greater than the minimum lot width in the Ivy Commons subdivision. So a buffer per our ordinance isn't required along that boundary. Now, as far as traffic and access goes, the streets will be 26 feet wide and sidewalks will be provided on both sides of the road. Parking can be permitted on one side of the street, and it would be the side opposite the side that the fire hydrants are installed on to make sure that the fire apparatus can pass through clearly. As I mentioned previously, the main entrance will be off of Ivy Street. I sort of did this merge with Ivy Commons to try and give you an idea of how the street network will look with this Hannah Ridge subdivision versus the Ivy Commons. So the main entrance will be off of Ivy Street here, loops around. A second connection will be provided with the Ivy Commons subdivision here. So there will be two access points. The Ivy Commons has its main entrance off of Ivy Street right here. And then 3 additional parcel or interparcel connections will be provided on the northern side, here, here, and here. And then also one on the eastern side, as I said, in case those parcels do ever develop more densely, we'll have that good interconnectivity of these neighborhoods. And then finally, a traffic study was done during the rezoning process earlier this year. And during that study, it was determined that the development would generate approximately 1,011 trips per day, with the majority of these flowing through the main entrance on Ivy Street. And then around 200 or so using the future connection with Ivy Commons once that is made. So the study determined that a right turn taper off of Ivy Street would be required for access, but then it didn't trigger a left turn lane. And the plat does show a right turn taper off of Ivy Street, a 200-foot right turn taper right here off of Ivy Street to meet that requirement. So the underground utilities and the stormwater infrastructure will be reviewed and approved during the public improvement plan process handled through our Public Works Department. There isn't a current lack of capacity for either water or sewer in this area, but Public Works will be requiring an engineering report addressing the capacity in these systems as part of that public improvement plan process to ensure. And then finally, Public Works did note during the plat review that the water and sewer connections for this development are going to be dependent on the build out of the Ivy Commons Phase 1B utilities. And construction hasn't started on this project or that phase of Ivy Commons yet, as far as I know, but it's expected to begin once the Phase 1A has been completed. And so finally, staff does believe that the applicant has met the minimum standards of the subdivision and zoning ordinance, and we are recommending approval of the plat. And ready for any questions you might have. And the applicant is also here to answer any questions as well.
Let me ask, who maintains the vegetation buffer?
That will be the responsibility of the homeowners or property owners association.
Homeowners Association?
Yeah.
What if they don't? Can the city enforce it? I'm just raising that question. You know, from my experience, I ran into that situation, and just think about that.
Sure, yeah, I would say the city could enforce it for sure.
Yeah.
If there was an issue and a complaint about, you know, some of the, if someone went out and were to remove all of them and the buffer no longer existed, yes, we would be able to.
Or just let it die.
Sure. I don't think, the city doesn't go out and do kind of a preemptive check on that all the time, but yes, if there was some kind of complaint about the vegetative buffer being gone at any point, we could enforce that.
Second question, on the map, it looked like there was an access to the east. Did I see? Yeah. Is it, what property's behind it?
That property is currently owned by, I believe, Keith Smith.
Is it possible development?
It's a large parcel with the, from what
I'm not being
I don't, I mean,
critical.
it's always possible.
Yeah.
There's
I'm
certainly
not
no
being
plans.
critical. It may be that
Yeah.
that ends up.
And I had the same question. Are the parcels next to it likely to be developed, or
I think
is there any way to tell that?
The ones on Ivy, isn't one of them already not subdivided, but they've come before us?
That's this one here.
Oh, that's this one?
Yeah, it's this
Okay. But there are ones beside it. Okay, I just was wondering about the one to the east.
So the adjacent properties are zoned residentially to, of some sort, and they're
Okay.
undeveloped currently, so it is likely that they could develop in the future, yes.
Okay.
How are they going to get to Ivy? But I guess that's a hypothetical, and maybe we'll decide that once something's actually proposed.
Yeah.
And I'd like to ask the developer, what is the estimated square footage of the homes that will be in the subdivision, and what's maybe
So many lots, but they're being
the
built.
price of the homes? Is there any idea or what that might be?
I can invite the applicant to the podium.
Yeah, if you
I think
have
that
any
might be
questions for
appropriate to
me
do
at the
right now.
moment. Okay.
I'd like to invite the applicant to the podium, please.
Good evening. Thank you for your time, Madam Chair, members of the commission, and members of staff. I'm Daniel Hansen with Balzer and Associates, the surveyor that's been working on this. This is Peter Boutros representing Santo LLC. He is the applicant. I think he's going to jump in on this question if you guys don't mind.
So the houses that we have slated are roughly between 1,500 square feet to like 2,200 square feet. The price point's as close to 3 as possible. We're hoping to be below it, but it's going to kind of depend on the market of the materials at the time of the build.
Are there any other things you'd like to share with us that maybe weren't communicated?
Daniel?
Sure. Not much to share. I do want to thank Alice Ann for a great presentation. I mean, she pretty much said everything that I would have said. To the comments about the accesses, at this point, no, obviously we don't control the adjoining properties. They are zone residential, and I do believe we have to provide connectivity to them. So that's sort of there's not really a crystal ball per se, but certainly I would say that this could open up some potential development for those other pieces, but not that we are aware of at this time. So,
Just a point of order. Can I
Sure.
have your name and address, please?
sure, I'm Daniel Hansen with Balzer and Associates. The address of the company is 104 Industry Way, Suite 102, Stanton, Virginia.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Sorry,
I just
it's
don't want to
okay.
get in trouble.
It's all good. My apologies for not giving you that to start with.
Any more questions from the?
I guess it was asked up here, you guys are going to be responsible, or your homeowners association, once it's fully developed, will be responsible for taking care of those buffers and maintaining them?
Yes, sir. I believe it's even I think we added it on a note on page 1 that those buffers will be easemented to the homeowners association or their designee, like whoever's going to be responsible for that maintenance, which long-term would likely be an HOA. I mean, that's what we would expect.
Okay.
Okay.
Can construction begin before the utilities are in? Or that installation imminent?
As far as the utilities in IV Commons,
Yes.
so our as was pointed out, the sewer goes from there's a proposed pump station, and it actually does pump up the that street access that connects to IV Commons. So the truth is, without their sewer, we really don't have a connection without really going around to try to get to something else. Again, I think as staff pointed out, that build out is frankly likely to happen before this project gets off the ground, or at least working in conjunction with each other, trying to get those facilities built.
Okay, yeah, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Okay, I'd like to open the public hearing on, back to my right page. I'd like to open the public hearing for a preliminary plat request by Santo LLC for a 109 lot residential subdivision on a 37.624 acre parcel located at 0 Ivy Street, Waynesboro, Virginia, tax map number 4-1-28A. And now I would like to invite people to, in an orderly fashion, come up to the podium. And when you come up to the podium, could you please give your name and address? And if you talk too long, I'm going to give you a warning, and then you're gone. You got 3 minutes. So whoever, do people sign up for it?
So I believe the majority of the people that are here are not for this specific request, but if anybody is for this Hannah's Ridge request, now is the time to speak.
Ooh, we're in for a spicy night.
I know, I said we were playing to a full house.
So I'm just a citizen of Waynesboro, nothing special. My name's Hashim Halstead. I'm at 1625 Edge Hill Road.
Okay.
Right behind the golf courses.
Okay.
My main questions about this is, who is responsible for the streets? Because obviously, as a taxpayer, it's a question that I frequently wonder when it comes to a lot of these newer developments that we're constantly looking at. We're always doing new developments here in Waynesboro. We're doing a lot of really awesome big things. So, do our tax dollars go towards these streets? Do they, as HOA, take over that type of cost? Okay.
No, and basically in Virginia, the way we do it, we're the city.
Yes.
City takes care of the streets. Once they're turned over to the city, we take care of the streets. But in order to take care of the streets, we get state money from
Right.
VDOT
Right.
to maintain the streets. And that's how our snow removal, everything comes from
Exactly.
state money.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I guess my main concerns would be as we add in all, because I think last time I checked, we have 155 miles of roads already here in Waynesboro. So adding onto those costs, I believe, just from my own research, like I'm a normal person, nothing crazy.
Just one other
Yes.
thing, the streets have to be built to the state standard
Right.
before they're accepted by the town.
Okay.
And he's correct, you get maintenance money, you add
Right.
maintenance mileage.
And do you think the property tax plus what you get from the state would end up covering that? As usually, that's
As it goes, the city has a system in place that grades our roads, and the resurfacing gets done by grading. I know right now we're doing a lot of water line repairs, and it doesn't look like we're doing the streets, but we're putting the water lines in so that we can use that state money to resurface them when the water lines are done. We don't want to come back and dig up water.
exactly. And I
But yeah,
guess,
the money's normally adequately enough to take care of our
Awesome.
streets.
That's
And
so
it
good.
gets increased as our city grows.
right. And then I guess my secondary question would be, with them tying into an already existing development for their sewage and water lines. I know, what was it last month, we had raving reviews from the EPA. Do you think that type of tie-in would start to go against us when it comes to our environmental protection?
No, because when our engineers developed our water sewer system, they over-engineered it, made it big enough for growth.
That's fantastic.
Going on our comprehensive plan, so they made it big enough that it will support that.
Awesome.
And the maintenance fund, the money we pay in sewer and stuff goes into an enterprise fund that's used to take care of it. It also goes into a savings so that when it needs to be increased, we can increase without borrowing.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, so I think we can close the public hearing. And do we have any other questions, or do we need to speak to the applicant again?
I'm good.
Okay. I'm a little bit fishy because, like, we're allowed to vote on this, right? We can vote on recommending it. Right?
Yeah, so it is a little bit different now that the new subdivision ordinance
Yeah,
is
I just want to make sure I do it
Sure.
correctly.
So yeah, you're not recommending approval of the preliminary plat. Your vote is so the motion is to approve the preliminary plat.
Okay.
And legally, we're bound to vote yes because there's no issues.
So I will say that.
Right, it's redundant.
Sure, I mean, based on the subdivision ordinance and the zoning ordinance, staff recommends that it does meet all those requirements. Say there was some tweak in, maybe where you think open space should go, or, if there was something kind of minor and specific like that, then those would be things that you could comment on, but just, denying the plat, it is a by right subdivision.
Okay.
And yeah, a little bit of foreshadowing for what's going to getting ready to happen. You're going to find out that we're legally obligated to vote for something that complies with the ordinance, and it's not something we can vote no on. I'm just putting that out there. Move to
Well, you
approve.
can vote no on it, but they'll see you in court.
Yes. That's something that I'm not willing to do.
This is a new change for us. Sorry for the confusion.
Yeah, this used to happen at the Board of Supervisors level, but now it's happening here tonight, for the first time.
So this is momentous.
Motion to approve the Santo LLC as presented. Do I need to read something complicated, or?
No, you're probably good.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Everyone in favor of the preliminary plat, approving the preliminary plat request by Santo LLC, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. On to the next public hearing. We have a public hearing, we're going to have a public hearing for a preliminary plat request by Wells Land Development LLC for a 58-lot residential subdivision on an 18.536 acre parcel located at 0 Stonewall Drive, Waynesboro, Virginia, tax map number 42-12-8. And we'll get our star of the evening to come to the podium again.
You were signing, and the planning commission chair signed preliminary plats and final plats.
I feel underqualified.
Okay, so our second application tonight is for the Cura Heights preliminary major subdivision plat. It is an 18.536 acre parcel, and this one is located sort of on the western side of the city, north of Rosser, behind Bellevue Road, Sumter, and where Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson Road dead end. This actually came before you early this year for a rezoning as well. So the property is 18.536 acres. Right now it's mostly wooded. It's zoned RS12, and the comprehensive plan designation is low-density residential. You can see that it's surrounded by the undeveloped Silver Creek, the developing Creekwood Village, and then some single-family residential development as well. So the zoning is RS12, which is the single-family residential large lot zoning. It allows for single-family detached homes only, and our ordinance does provide an option for a cluster development option, which allows a developer to cluster smaller lots together and reserve the remainder of the property as dedicated open space. Using this option within RS12 allows for a maximum density of 3.5 units per acre, a minimum lot size of 4,500 square feet, and then it also requires that 30% of the area be reserved as common area and open space. So the applicant's request is for a major subdivision preliminary plat, and again, this one is by right with no waivers, meaning that we have no discretion to deny it as long as the applicant has satisfied the requirements of the zoning and subdivision ordinances. And again, I'll show you the plat here in just a moment, but it shows 58 single-family residential lots that range in size from 4,500 square feet to 11,988 square feet. The density in this case is about 3.2 units per acre. And in addition to the lots, the plat does show 6.661 acres of dedicated open space, and then also another 3.3 acres of right-of-way, including the streets and sidewalks and that sort of thing. So here is a look at the plat. It does show connections with Summercrest and Carmen. Summercrest will be continued down to Stonewall Jackson Road, which will then connect to Davis. Carmen will continue and wrap around and link in with Summercrest. So this will provide the neighborhood about 3 access points and complete the grid in this area. The development is going to be occurring in three phases per the plat. Phase 1 will be the northern part with the continuation of Summercrest and Carmen, providing those 2 connections. and then continuing southward with Phase 2, and then finally Phase 3 with Summercrest connecting into Stonewall Jackson Road, and then Davis Road. So because this development is using the cluster development option, 30% of the overall acreage is required to remain in open space. The applicant has provided 6.61 acres of a dedicated open space, which equates to about 35% of the overall acreage, which is about 18.536, if I recall correctly. Some of this acreage does double as stormwater management facilities, as well as open space, but our ordinance also requires that 60%, or approximately in this case 3.34 acres of this open space be contiguous. And in this case, the applicant has shown 5.361 acres of contiguous space, most of it concentrated on, I believe, the eastern side of the parcel. So most of it's sort of focused in this area right here. Another requirement for the cluster development option is that of that open space, 25% of it must be improved in some way. And in this case, that would equate to about 1.39 acres. The ordinance is fairly flexible as for options for the improvements, includes trails, parks, playgrounds. And the applicant has decided to provide a trail system that starts off Carmen Drive and has spurs down to Julian Drive and then also Robert E. Lee. And in the center, they'll also be providing a small gathering space for the residents. And the trails and the gathering space are all required to be maintained by the Future Homeowners Association. This plat also shows a vegetative buffer in certain areas. It's made a note that the buffer that will be provided, which is along portions of the northern part of the division, sort of southeastern part right here, and then also a portion of the southern boundary of the property will have that 10-foot buffer, and they have designated that it will be a Class A vegetative buffer, which again is that 10 feet wide, 2 canopy trees, 2 understory trees, and 12 shrubs per 100 linear feet. And then this right here is just sort of a diagram of what that could look like from our ordinance. So currently the plat is showing that the streets are 36 feet wide with sidewalk on both sides. I'll note, and I'll get into more details about this in a moment, but staff will be recommending that this width be reduced to 30 feet so that a 3-foot buffer can be provided between the back of the curb and the sidewalk, just for enhanced pedestrian safety. So if the developer chooses to go that route, parking will again be restricted to just one side of the street, and that would be the side opposite the fire hydrants, again, to allow that clearance for the fire apparatus. So as far as access and connections go, again, they will be providing 2 connections sort of on the northern side. They'll be continuing Summercrest south down to Stonewall Jackson Road and Davis, and then also Carmen will be continued and sort of wrapped around to connect into Summercrest right there. The average daily trips to the neighborhood have been estimated to be about 549 trips, and they have assumed that a third of the trips, or the trips would sort of be separated, a third going up Summercrest, a third going up Carmen, and then a third through Davis, sort of splitting up evenly along all 3 connections. As part of the rezoning application earlier this year, there was a traffic analysis submitted based on a denser development that included townhomes. I'll note that rezoning was withdrawn, but that analysis was reviewed by VDOT, and it was determined that because of the connectivity of the existing street network, no additional traffic improvements were warranted aside from those street connections to help disperse it. And this slide just gives a little better view of the street connectivity in this area. After the subdivision, it shows the connections with Summercrest continuing, and then also Carmen going up to Main and then down to Davis, down to Northgate to Rosser. This helps give that picture. Okay, so as far as utilities and stormwater management, the applicant is going to have to follow the state guidelines for stormwater management. And this will include handling all the excess quantity and then the nutrient load generated by the site on site. These guidelines have become more stringent in recent years, requiring that all the stormwater be managed on the site itself. Again, the underground utilities and the stormwater infrastructure will be reviewed and approved during the public improvement plan process. And to date, those plans have not been submitted. So staff has reviewed the plat and provided the applicant with comments, and a revised plat was submitted back to us on Friday, September 16th. However, that resubmittal is still being reviewed by staff, and there will be a couple additional comments that we will ask the developer to address before the preliminary plat can be finalized in staff's opinion. And I wanted to run through what these comments were. Staff does not believe that any of these additional comments would substantially change what the plat will look like now. It's mostly smaller things that we still have to work out. But our first recommendation would be reducing that street pavement width, like I discussed previously. Along with that note that the on-street parking would need to be restricted to one side of the street. Second comment that we would have would be to recommend that the trail surface be crushed stone instead of mulch due to concerns about maintenance and runoff. And this comment isn't an ordinance requirement, it would just be a recommendation from staff that they could take or not. We would also ask that they provide the total lot square footages instead of the dimensions. We would also request that they confirm that the planned common area improvements meet that 1.39 acre requirement and note that on the plat. We'd also request that they indicate on the plat that the circle in the center of that trail network is a gathering space and that the paths of the trail could vary depending on the ground determinations. We also ask that they add a signature line for the chair of the Planning Commission. This is a change with the new subdivision ordinance. The mayor no longer has to sign, but the chair of the Planning Commission will. And then finally, Public Works has asked us to include a note that the approval of the preliminary plat does not constitute a final utility layout approval. That is something that will occur during the public improvement plan review. And so with that said, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission table the application tonight and take it up again at the October 18th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. And this is to allow staff time to ensure that all the comments that I just ran through and make sure that those in the initial comment letter were addressed and ensure that the preliminary plat meets the zoning and subdivision ordinance requirements. And again, I'll say that staff does not believe that the plat will change substantially between tonight and the October 18th meeting date, which is why we believe the public hearing can proceed as scheduled tonight. And that is all I have for you.
And I just would like to include one additional thing. If it were to substantially change for some reason that we cannot comprehend right now, we would certainly make sure we rescheduled a public hearing
Yes.
and made proper notification.
Yes.
Alessandra, this was the tract that we denied the rezoning that would have taken it from RS 12 to RS 7. And had we allowed that, it would potentially have allowed many more, or a number more houses to be platted on this property.
Yeah, not as many more as you would think. I went back and checked that, and it looked to me like there were 61 lots with the RS7 versus the 58 lots here with the cluster development option.
But this, although we're not voting on approving the plat, ultimately it's again a by right
That is correct.
for RS 12.
Yes.
Okay.
And I will point out that state code requires that you have a cluster subdivision option if your locality had a population growth rate between census, so from 2000 to 2010, of 10%. I did go back and check to see, if the city had that and if that was a reason why it was put into the ordinance. It looks like the population growth rates have ranged anywhere from 5.5% to as high as 7.3%. So it doesn't appear that that is the reason that it was, certainly it could have been preemptively included in code and kind of well thought through to say we want to provide a cluster subdivision option, but it wouldn't be required by state code. But I do just want to point out that some localities are required to have a cluster subdivision option if your population growth rate is 10%.
Any other questions for Alessandra?
I've got a quick question, just about parking on one side of the street there, across from fire hydrants. Will all these properties have driveways, or will people be forced to park their car where they can, because I'm just thinking that it may be a little congested?
I believe that all the properties will have driveways, although you can confirm that with the developer, but I believe they will.
And I've got some questions about what constitutes a gathering area. That's probably better answered by the applicant.
Yeah,
Can we invite the applicant to the?
yes. They're back there. They also have a small presentation, I believe, that
Okay,
gets
great.
set up for them as well.
This time I'd like to invite the applicant to the podium, please. Can you give your name and address, please?
Good evening, Madam Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Steve Driver. I was here in April. You may remember me. A couple of you know we're not here at that meeting, so it's a pleasure to meet you this evening. Yeah, we put together a PowerPoint just for brevity here to run through this without spending too much time on it, so I'll go through it fairly quickly. And if anybody has questions, feel free to stop me and ask. And even if I'm seated, I can come back up and answer questions then too. All right, Kira Heights. What we put in here basically is what we'll call a context plan. And it helps both the public and the Planning Commission see the overall context of the area. And if you'll note, right in the center is where Kira Heights is located, here. And it's almost in the geometric center of a traffic triangle, if you will. This is Rosser Avenue, Route 340. This is West Main Street, which is Route 250, and this is Lou DeWitt Boulevard here. We provided this so that you could see the proximity of the development with respect to the street network system that's in place, and also so you could see where the neighboring development are located with respect to Kira Heights. Just to the west is Silver Creek, and that's slated at 90 units. And to the southwest is Creekwood Village, which is basically behind Martin's and Walmart, and that's slated at 200 units. Both of those developments adjoin Kira Heights. Area zoning, and we provided this exhibit so you could see sort of what the zoning is in the area, the neighborhood area. If you look up in this brown area here is actually RS7, and that's part of the old Mondomain subdivision. That was built probably in the 1940s. It predated the current city zoning ordinance, and of course they didn't have stormwater regulations that really applied at that time. In the more of the sort of the pea green area is the RS12 district, and that includes Kira Heights. And directly to the west is the RS7 district, also, which is part of Silver Creek. This exhibit basically, We put this in here because we wanted to identify the various speakers that were here in April. There was actually a dozen of them, and they weren't a dirty dozen. They were actually pretty nice people. But anyway, it just turned out to be 12 people that spoke. And so just to demonstrate that we took to heart what they said and want to make sure that they knew that we were working to address their concerns. And what this exhibit here shows is the various property owners that are, whoops, I hit the wrong button here. Let me back up a minute. Sorry about that. It shows the location of the various, back up here. Sorry about that. There we go. All right, it's a button up here. Yeah. So around the perimeter here, you can see where these various people live. And Marcia Berg, she's here tonight. I saw her in the audience. Ron Brower spoke. Ingrid Meadows and Dan Meadows, I saw them here as well. And John Fisk, I see him back there. Janice Gibson, Andrew Kearney, Gary Gibson, Julie Danick, Valerie Hancock, Madison Carr, and Michael Bailey. I'm not sure if all of them are here tonight. I don't think they are. Where are you? Okay, good. Yeah, I'll remember you. Okay. Okay. All right, good. This is good. We'll go to the next exhibit here. We put this in here basically, as Alison indicated, we're utilizing the cluster development option for the RS zoning district. The nice thing about that particular option is it enables us to put the development lots in a consolidated area and conserve a significant amount of open space. And so I think when the last meeting concluded, there was some notation about this property being shaped as a finger, and I guess the comment was made, which finger is it? Well, anyway, let's hope it's a good finger. But the green tip there, you can see, is the tip. It's the tip of the finger, and that area is going to be preserved pretty much in its natural state. That's going to remain as wooded open space, and through that wooded open space will be some passive recreation trails, okay? And there'll be a community gathering node in there, and probably we would put some birdhouses up on the trees and maybe some on a post. So we want to encourage deer habitat and birds. There's a lot of birds out there, and I understand there are some foxes that run out there as well. So that area that we've indicated there is just a contiguous area. It's not all of the open space. It's just a portion of it, but it's 3+ acres in size, okay? This exhibit we put in just simply to demonstrate where a sensitive area of the development was located, and that is right next to the Meadows property. And you can see there's a blue rectangle in the corner. That's their pool that sits in their backyard. And on the other side of Robert E. Lee Avenue is John Fisk's property. So Robert E. Lee Avenue runs through and between those two properties. And I want to talk about that just for a little bit. This basically is a three-dimensional image, a photo basically, looking at the property if you're standing on Robert E. Lee Avenue looking into the subject property. And you can see the area that's designated by the dash line. That's about 30 feet of driveway that the Meadows have constructed. That's actually in the Robert E. Lee right-of-way, but they use that for access to their land, their property. And also, you'll notice in the next exhibit that because this is a dead-end street, you can see that there's some landscaping that's occurred down in that area. You can see the framed landscaping bed. There's some ditches down in that area that convey stormwater from the old Walnut Grove Farm subdivision. And go to the next one here. And this shows in plan view basically this same area. You can see the lot to the left is the Meadows property, and the lot to the right is the Fisk property. And you can see how Robert E. Lee Avenue comes in and terminates there. You can see a couple of vehicles parked in that area. So obviously, if there had been a road extension through here, it would have had a significant impact on Mr. Mehta's property. So we've eliminated that now, so that road will remain as it is today. Okay, there will be no road connection. All of that area will remain open space for passive recreation. I want to point out the development impacts on the property. You can see there's quite a number of them. Let's talk about the off-site drainage first. That comes down from the upland watershed areas, which come out of the old Mondomain subdivision. And to the upper left, you'll see there's about 4 acres of area that drains down Summercrest Avenue, and that water runs onto this property. So we will have to deal with that water runoff, stormwater runoff. Just to the right of that is another area that's labeled about 8 acres. That's a little bit, it's double the size, it's a bigger area, but again, it comes from the old Mondomain subdivision, and it runs down Carmen Avenue to where Mrs. Berg, I think, mentioned there's some cattails growing, okay? The cattails are actually not on this property, they're actually on the right-of-way of Carmen Avenue, but there are cattails there. And right down below that, you'll see a stippled, sort of a tan stippled area where it says low area. That's where this water goes. And because when the Mondomain subdivisions were developed, they didn't have to comply with the current stormwater regulations. So when you talk about wetlands, there are 3 conditions that have to be met, or one of 3 conditions that have to be met to meet the definition of a wetland. It's hydrophytic vegetation, it's hydric soils, and it's hydrology. Well, if you don't have water, you don't have wetlands, right? So what's happened over the years, this water has drained down Carmen Avenue into this property, and it's created the hydrology needed for cattails and things like that to grow. So that's what's there today. We'll have to do a study on that, and if it requires permitting, we'll pursue that as well. The other impacts I want to point out here, there's an old water line that runs across the property. It's called the Parker Heights water line, and we understand it to be a transite water line, but the location of it is a little bit ambiguous. We have several resources that show different locations for it. So part of what we plan to do is to locate and find out where the water line really is, and that water line will remain in service, okay? So we will relocate portions of it, and it will connect to our water system as well and create a looped system. But the point is, the water line exists today, and we have to deal with it, okay? So it's a development cost. The other area on the right side there, you'll see is a sinkhole. That sinkhole measures about 3 feet in diameter, and it's about 18 inches deep. It's not a big sinkhole, but it's right behind the Meadows property, and it's very near an existing sanitary sewer manhole. With this development scheme, we're not touching that area. We're staying away from it. There will be no construction work near that sinkhole, okay? The other thing I'll point out, at the lower part of the property down here is a spring, and it's our estimation, we'll have this studied, but we're pretty certain it is a spring. But that's located at the north end of an open space area. So we would plan to leave that spring pretty much alone. The road that's planned to go down in that area would be north of it, okay? And then there's a couple other things too. The gardens aren't a big deal, and I don't think Mr. Shiflett was here, but he's got a garden that's 20 by 30 feet here that sits on the applicant's property. And also, there's another garden here that's 18 by 24, which belongs to the lady that lives here. And I'm not sure if she's here tonight. She's not? Yeah, she spoke at the last meeting. I don't see her here. And then lastly, there's a property down here below that's owned by Mr. Daltrey. I don't think he was at the meeting last time either. But he actually has a shed, a compost bin, and a good part of his fence and swing that all encroach on adjacent property. And I don't know if he realizes that or not, but I can't imagine that wasn't caught or picked up during, when the property was sold sometime in the past. But that's a pretty significant impact down there. All right, next slide. This goes back up. Now, this is the northwesternmost off-site drainage area. In the green is about 4 acres. And that includes houses and streets. And all that water, it comes down toward Bellevue, crosses Bellevue, and enters into our site along Summercrest Avenue. And Mrs. Berg is here. Yeah, she's got her hand up. She knows right here at this intersection is a low point. And so when you get heavy rain, the water basically ponds up at that intersection. And it sits there until it gets deep enough, it runs across the crown of the road and comes into the subject property. But it stays in a puddles in the corners of the intersection until it basically dries up. So that's a different issue, but it is an issue. It doesn't impact this property in any way other than it's just an issue. Next slide. This shows a watershed, also an upland watershed area that's immediately east of and adjacent to the 4 acre. This watershed area is about 8 acres, and like the other one, the water flows from rooftops and houses along the roads and runs down this street here, crosses Bellevue again, and enters the site here at the end of Carmen Avenue. That's where the cattails are located. Okay. Next slide. We put this in here just to demonstrate, show some of the traffic and also show some setbacks. But with the previous plan, as you know, we had a connection to Robert E. Lee, which was right here. So some of the traffic was shown coming out here. And the concern was there would be cars coming through here and using this as a shortcut to get on Vedette and coming out here at Northgate. That option no longer exists. Again, these blue numbers here are just estimates, but we're figuring it might be as many as 75% of the people might want to use this lower exit because it's a direct access along Davis Road to Northgate, and we feel like probably 75% of the people that live up here would work either out at the Waynesboro Town Center or Charlottesville, Harrisonburg, or Stanton, and they would probably all go out that way to catch the interstate, okay? We figure about 25% might come up on the north end, and we've split that 50-50, 50 on Summercrest, 50 on Carmen. That could change a little bit, but basically what it comes down to is where we assume traffic to be located within our development, and that would impact how we design our pavement structure for the roads. The other thing I'd like to point out, and I don't think Mr. Kearney's here tonight. Oh, is he there? Where is he? Oh, there you are, way over there. Okay. Yeah, Mr. Kearney had pointed out that, when we had this previous concept, there were lots along the back of his, and he made a comment that if he were to walk out to his back fence, he would be sure to tell his neighbor that he told you so. You should have bigger lots. Well, anyway, this concept completely addresses that idea. So the way it is now, if Mr. Kearney would stand at his back fence, he would have to use a very high decibel voice with a strong westbound wind, okay, for the nearest neighbor to hear what he has to say, okay? Because the nearest neighbor is 420 feet from his rear property line to the setback of the nearest building. That's 1.5 football fields, guys. I mean, if you like football, we're in football season, hey, that's a long way. It will take a while to walk across there, much less to expect somebody to hear you that far away. All right, now, the other one down here, this is Ron, let me get the name here. Yeah, Ron Brower lives here, And we just wanted to put this in here too, to put it in context, but the distance from the back of his house to the nearest setback line is 270 feet. That's just about a football field away. So it kind of helps you put this in perspective. So all the development is way over to the western side, and there's a huge expanse of open space between the existing dwellings and the proposed dwellings. Okay? Next slide. We put this in here so you could actually see visually really what this development does. It leaves about 45% green space. This is on 18 acres of land, okay? And only about 55% is subdivision. That's it. That's almost a 50-50 relationship. So as you can see, my wife, she owns 2 lots down on the Warwick River in Newport News, okay? These lots have been in the family for years. They probably measure 100 feet by 150 feet wide. There's only 2 left. There's houses built all around the perimeter of it. But when she and I go down to visit family, we see a herd of deer on that lot. There's probably 8 or 10 of them to this day. So if deer can congregate on a lot that's 100 by 150, certainly they can congregate on 45% of 18 acres. Okay, so this has very little impact to the habitat. Now we want to put this exhibit in here just to give you a relative size comparison. And if you look here, you'll see this is Martin's, where I like to shop, by the way, and this is Walmart. But this property behind here it represents Creekwood Village. It's 200 units. Okay, we took this is Kira Heights. We took it and just superimposed it onto Creekwood Village, and you can see that it only represents 26%, or about 1/4 the size of Creekwood Village. We just put that in there so you could see what this development is with respect to what else has been approved in the area, just contextually. Silver Creek is 90 units. Then Silver Creek is directly north of Creekwood Village. All right, in closing, development cost as outlined, development costs associated with this parcel, for the reasons we've laid out, are expected to be higher than normal. Zoning, as Allison mentioned before, we were coming in with the RS7 zoning, which a lot of developers are doing now, but we've abandoned that at the request of the community, and we left it back as an R12 zoning district, and that was basically the majority request in the April meeting. We did employ the cluster provision. Density, this is kind of interesting. And talk about density. When you look at the old Mondane section of Waynesboro, that was about a little over 4 units per acre. The newer section of Mondomain, which is along Bellevue Drive, is about 2.1 units per acre. Kira Heights is at 3.189. Okay, city zoning ordinance allows up to 3.5 units per acre. So we're well below what the city ordinance requires. But when you look at the old Mondane subdivision, the old section and the new section, we're right in the middle. So the density fits the area very well. Okay. As far as traffic goes, again, we're planning a density of 3.129 units per acre, which is less than 3.5. Traffic generation is not a complicated thing, okay? It's based on single-family ITE code, land use 210. Hey, that's it. You can talk to VDOT all day, and that's what it is. Single-family residential development. They use 10 vehicle trips per day on a single-family lot. But when you look in the IT manual, it's like 9.66, okay? Anyway, that is what it is. You can't change it. That's going to apply to every single-family development. Number 5, wildlife habitat. The cluster provision of the RS-12 zone enables preservation of large contiguous open space, as we've demonstrated. Number 6, final major subdivision plat and subdivision construction plans will be subject to community development review and approval. 7, site environmental and geotechnical evaluations will be performed and permits obtained as required. And as the curtain closes here, we thank you for your time. And let me know if you have any questions. I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
I've got one, and I don't know if it's for you or for staff, but the Creekwood subdivision to the left there, that's been approved, right? That's going to go in, but we don't have access going through this subdivision? Do we need it?
So yes, there is no interconnectivity specifically to that subdivision, but this subdivision does have 3 different connection points, and then Creekwood has multiple connection points as well.
And that satisfies the ordinance?
The ordinance just requires interconnectivity.
Isn't one of the problems in that area Pratt's Run and the need to build a bridge?
I believe that is the history of that subdivision, yes.
And a bridge is very expensive.
Yes.
Any other questions for the applicant?
If I may say one quick thing while I'm thinking about it. Marcia Berg, you've mentioned that you had some issues with groundwater. We do that type of work. If you need help with that, call us. Well, hey, I don't want to take everybody's too much time, but I will participate. I do a lot of expert testimony. And we represent a local person in this area. There's karst in this area. There's a dude that came down from Washington, D.C., okay? This was for Mid-Atlantic Waterproofing. And he sat across from the conference table. He was 2 feet from us, and he pointed his finger at us. He said, I want you to know my name is Battle, and it's spelled B-A-T-T-L-E, and I have never lost a court case. We just looked at him, didn't say a word. Went to court, jury trial. Jury was in deliberation probably for an hour and a half. They came back, and they voted in favor of the plaintiff, which is who we were representing. And we walked out of the courtroom. The guy didn't say a word. He left. And I told the attorney I was working with, I said, hey, we haven't heard the last of this yet. 2 months later, he appeals the court decision. We knew he would. Came back down from Washington, D.C. He was dressed nice. The blue suede shoes and the tie and all this stuff. And he said, he reminded us what his last name was. Went back to another jury trial, same outcome. We haven't heard a peep from him. Anyway, this was Mid-Atlantic Waterproofing. They represent a lot of area up and down the East Coast. In fact, they waterproofed my basement. Yeah.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
you're welcome.
Okay, so now I'd like to open the public hearing for a preliminary plat request by Wells Land Development LLC for a 58-lot residential subdivision on an 18.536 acre parcel located at 0 Stonewall Drive, Waynesboro, Virginia, tax map 42-12-8. You can approach the podium. Oh, did I have
Well, no, it's fine. I just wanted to let you know that we did receive 2 letters. One was from a Valerie Pack, who I believe may be here. If you would like us to read it out loud, we can. We typically do that if that is the preference, or if you plan to speak. Okay, and then we have one other. So is it okay if I go ahead and read those?
You can go ahead.
Okay. So the first one says, hello, I live at 2324 Bellevue Road in Waynesboro and would like to oppose the approval of Julian Wells' request for 58 homes in the acreage behind my home. As a homeowner that would be directly impacted by this development, I would like to express several concerns with this potential development. I purchased this property 3 years ago because of the affordability and the quiet setting with the woods directly behind my house. If he builds this development, I will likely be moving out of Waynesboro. I am concerned about disparity of Mr. Wells' homes in comparison with existing homes and lots. He is trying to cram 3 houses in a lot my size. It does not fit with this neighborhood and surrounding neighborhoods. Concern that will affect my property value, noise from the roads he is planning for ingress and egress, as well as years of construction, disruption of wildlife, potential runoff of water, potential for more crime. Are there adequate municipal facilities to accommodate the number of people that would be moving into our neighborhood? And then thank you very much for your consideration. I hope that you will not approve his request for the 58-house development. And then we did receive one other, and it says, members of the Planning Commission, we have lived at 604 Vedette Avenue for the past 18 years. At the time we bought our home, there were stop signs at nearly every intersection and a big dip that slowed traffic through this area. Then all were removed and Vedette became a thoroughfare from Route 340 to Route 250. Since that time, we have had 3 of our vehicles totaled in front of our home. In addition, True Green of Charlottesville, our lawn care service, had their truck hit and towed away from in front of our home. Speed limit is not enforced and our speed dip is practically non-existent. Now you want to add more traffic to our street and make it even worse. You were planning on 40 houses, now 58, almost a 50% increase. We don't need more traffic. We are against any plan that will increase traffic on Vedette. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And then we do have the sign-up sheet, so if you would like me to call people in order.
That'd be great.
Okay. So the first person we have signed up is Ron Bruner, 616 Sumter? Brower, excuse me.
I didn't sign up.
I think at the end, though, it'll be open.
I'm Ron Brower at 616 Sumter Road. I have one of the largest properties that face this development. I'm not opposed to the development of the property as long as the homes and the lots are equivalent in size to what is there existing. Based upon the map that I saw earlier, it looks like most of these lots are only 90 by 50 foot wide. Is that correct?
I believe that's the average.
Yeah, I believe that is the average. They range anywhere from 4,500 square feet, the majority kind of that size, up to 11,000, but the majority are.
I have some reservation in lot size that size as a home compared to mine. Now, I just spent a considerable amount of money removing vegetation that fell from their property onto my property to get it off. And I don't have a problem with that because I don't burn wood, and the tree people just came in, moved the trees back and so forth. But I am opposed to the size homes that they want to build and to the additional problems that will occur, that we'll have to have. And with all of the developments that we are having throughout the city, do we need 58 homes in this piece of property? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brower.
The next person signed up to speak is Marcia sorry.
Right, it's not that bad.
No.
Marshburg, 2316. Most of you've heard from me. Welcome to the new ones. Well done. Much better prepared than the last time when you were here. However, I felt like you were kind of condescending to us because how you were addressing us and almost making light of some of our concerns. And so he gave it as a developer, and I understand that, but we're the homeowners and we're the property owners. I prepared a little something, and maybe it will help those who you just joined, maybe not. Initially, it was denied an RS7 rating because there were more lots. Many issues with this property that warranted that denial are still there. They haven't gone away. Surrounded by nice brick homes, nice lots, good sizes. This is only three lots less that they want to put in if it had become an RS7. But nothing has changed with the actual property. There's still limestone caverns, underground springs, karst. There is an issue which you didn't mention. There is an active Columbia Gas 20-inch gas line that is behind our property. And it goes around a good part of that property. And I know that there is an easement, but I need to know, he's talked about what's behind other people's property. How far is that buffer zone going to be between Bellevue and the subdivision? You didn't mention that. at all? Okay, but that was something you didn't mention, and it's not just because we want the land, it's because we've got a 20-inch pipeline back there. And that is a concern. We've also were told at the last meeting that there were some underground pipes that could potentially hold some hazardous linings. Asbestos, we don't know. There's a mitigation problem. The wetlands, the cattails he kept referring to, I've been in touch with the Army Corps of Engineers and the DEQ. I sent pictures. It's more than just at the end of the line. As a matter of fact, there's 3 houses they have coming right as you go into the new part of Carmen. He's got 3 houses on the left, they do. That's where the potential wetlands are. And Mr. Pero of the Army Corps has assured me that before they can do anything, they will have to get with him and get permission or get permits. And if it's wetlands, can't do anything. All that water he was talking about that really just puddles, no. Come down our street when we've really got it coming down from Forest and Silver Creek subdivision and all the way down from the other areas and come into Carmen. It's not just little puddles, it's good little rivers. And when that hailstorm hit, it looked like we had icebergs all over the place. It's just, there's more to it. Most of us have sump pumps. Some of us have 2 sump pumps. Ours have been known to go off, and it hasn't rained. There are underground springs under some of the houses. There will be more compacted lots, impermeable areas, and so that's going to bring water. We don't know what's going to be there. If they can control it, that's great. I love their plans for the deer and everything. I think that's wonderful. But it's not a zoning request. You've already been through that. It's approval, but we hope you have a say in what they can plan, suggestions and changes and approvals. It's only 3 less houses, but there's still a lot going on in that area. It's not just that. It's also, there's now, since April, more homes and businesses. Look what's happening out on Rosser Avenue. Will the infrastructure hold for this property? Will services hold for this property? Will the schools be able to handle additional 2.1 children? We're already seeing the impact of that West End development. So we just really hope that y'all will take that into consideration. And while you're at it, please tell the city to reconsider and start building that West End fire station, because we're going to need it.
That's coming very soon.
Thank you. I knew you would do that.
Thank you.
The next signed up is Lindsay Bailey.
Yeah. Yeah, that Honda dealership, the back of that.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Bailey, and I live at 2500 Davis Road with my husband Michael Bailey and our 2 children. First, I want to thank you for your service to our community and listening to all our comments tonight. I have several concerns about the possible development of the land at 0 Stonewall Drive. I actually grew up in this neighborhood, and my husband and I purchased a home in this neighborhood in 2020. Lived here for over 2 years. We've enjoyed this quiet and peaceful neighborhood, as it is a great place to raise a young family. My biggest concern is traffic. Looking at the map, my home is the one right at the end of Davis, and it looks like we're going to have 10 feet of trees as a barrier to the next house. So there was really no changes in the map considering my property. And I'm very concerned that Davis Road is going to turn into a highway. We are already being kept up at night due to the sounds of motorcycles and speeding cars coming off of Vedette Avenue. My husband and I used to live off of 13th Street, and the traffic was a major factor in why we wanted to move. I actually stopped walking on Vedette Avenue several years ago because it became more like a highway than a street. I'm concerned that Davis Road will turn into the same thing. Even without the new development, the traffic is so bad that one of my neighbors recently had a car come around the corner and go into her yard. One of my teenage son's favorite things to do is ride his bicycle to Waynesboro High School. I am very concerned for his safety if this goes through. There's also several new businesses around Walmart that have recently opened. What will happen when they are connecting roads to a 58-unit housing neighborhood? Who will make sure that the speed limit is enforced, because it currently is definitely not enforced, and I see that every day. If this proposal goes through, we will have to stop riding bikes, walking small children, or even walking in our neighborhood. My second concern is the change in home count from the last meeting. The developer initially wanted 61 homes and a rezoning of the property. The developer is not asking for a rezoning, but would like to build 58 houses with the cluster option. The minimum lot area for RS 12 per unit is 12,000 square feet. Under the cluster option, the minimum lot size is 4,500 square feet. The reason we did not want RS 7 was due to the number of houses in the neighborhood. Does the developer's current proposal fall within the RS 12 guidelines if there was no cluster option? Our lot is about 19,000 square feet, and we are one of the smallest lots on the street. They seem to be trying to cram in the same number of homes as before and not taking the surrounding neighborhood into account when planning this development. My third concern is the amount of water and potential sinkholes on this property. I'm worried about plumbing and drainage issues for sure. There are underground springs, limestone caves, and sinkholes on this land. The land is a marsh, and many homes have sump pumps due to flooding. I'm very concerned about the amount of water and how this is going to affect my house. There is also a very substantial active natural gas line along my property. This will be a very large hassle to deal with for someone that wants to build on that land. My final concern is the need to have 58 more small lots. At the last meeting, someone talked about the lack of affordable housing in Waynesboro. This is a problem all over our country due to inflation at a 40-year high, poor policy decisions, and many other contributing factors. Why not look at all the contributing factors to why there is a lack of affordable housing instead of giving an immediate rubber stamp of approval on a 58-unit neighborhood on a small plot of land? This decision affects me not only personally, but many other people as well. At the last meeting, someone brought up the fact that the schools have room to grow. As a public school teacher myself, I can tell you that a school with room to grow is a lot better than a school crammed to maximum capacity due to poor decisions and over-concentration of people in one area. Today, urban planners and developers would like to eliminate single-family zoning altogether. They look at the overall picture and profitability and not the people. This neighborhood that exists...
Excuse me, you've passed your time limit.
Okay.
I'm sorry to cut you off.
I'll wrap up. I would like to keep this land...
You're done.
Oh,
You're
okay.
done. These flashing lights, maybe I didn't make it clear. It'll be green, and then it'll be yellow, and when it starts to flash red, you're done.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next person signed up is Hashim Halstead.
Hi, I'm back. Looking at this plan, I have a lot of friends and family in these areas, and honestly, I think that was a really good presentation. I think he did a good job of addressing a lot of specific issues, and I'm hearing a lot of other issues, but most of them have to do with the way that the street is set up and the speed in which cars would be traveling through these neighborhoods with children and families. And I know that we as a city have been very focused on building greenways and biking infrastructure and pedestrian centers. And I think that maybe just using, because as we're all aware, signage doesn't necessarily slow people down, physics does. So if we were to add some sort of barrier to speeding, whether that's continual sidewalks, speed tables, what have you, even just like those little lines, just to slow down traffic through these areas, especially through, I believe it's Davis and Bellevue. I think that would be a huge advantage to that community so that children could get back on their bikes, even with, because like you said earlier, we can't really stop this if it's within legal parameters, which it seems like it is. But adding in those physics-based barriers to speeding, I think would really help a lot of that community and help put people back on the road, people back into using the space. And I think that'd be a really healthy decision to consider for the developers and even just for us as Waynesboro City, so that we can just have a safer space for these families that really do care about their communities and care about using this space holistically. Even just being able to walk to Martin's or ride your bike to Walmart when your car breaks down, I think would be huge. Like I said, there's not much we can do about stopping it if it's within the legal parameters, which it does seem like it is. But I think we should do something about
the speeding.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Definitely.
The next speaker signed up is John Fisk.
Good evening, I'm John Fisk, 612 Vedette Avenue. I appreciate the green space that the developer has provided. I have a question. When you calculate houses per acre, is that houses per the acreage of the development or overall, or is that the acreage of the houses minus the green space?
It's the acreage of the development overall.
Okay, all right. And another question, does Waynesboro meet the requirements for cluster development if we are less than 10% growth over a 10-year period?
So the Waynesboro has an ordinance regardless.
Gotcha.
What I was speaking about was that the state requires localities to have an ordinance if they have the 10%. So we don't have an ordinance because we were required to by the state, but Waynesboro does have a cluster subdivision development ordinance.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Sure. The smaller lots compared to the RS7 has, its concerns. It's a lot denser, and it just doesn't quite fit in with the existing neighborhood, as several others have mentioned. And something else, if you look at Summercrest down to Davis, that looks like another cut-through that people would use as a shortcut. The calculations are based on the amount of homes that are going to be in the development, but I think traffic load is going to be even higher because people are going to want to miss that light on. They're going to want to skip the light on Vedette and Main Street and just take a right on to Summercrest. You're right down to Davis, and it's going to be an easy cut through for people. So I think you need to reconsider allowing the cluster development in that neighborhood. I said that lots are even smaller than RS7. Development's even denser, but and it just doesn't quite fit. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker signed up is Gary Gibson.
I'm Gary Gibson, 2216 Bellevue. Most of my concerns have already been brought up, but, at the last rezoning meeting where you recommended not to rezone to RS7 because of the lot size that fits in with the existing neighborhoods, and now they're wanting to put a lot smaller lot sizes, which RS12 was for the larger lots, which more people were in favor of, and now they're going to smaller lots with the same number of homes. And I don't see how you can recommend that, after turning down RS7. So that's my concern. There's only 3 less houses than what they had to begin with on 12 acres, 13 acres, because of the green space that they've added, which is fine, but it doesn't help the density of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker signed up is Janice Gibson.
Hi there, Janice Gibson, 2216 Bellevue. I just wanted to voice my disappointment in the way it was handled when we had our last meeting. The point that we were trying to make was that we wanted to keep our neighborhood pretty much aesthetically the same. We have lots of cookie cutter neighborhoods in Waynesboro with the little houses, big houses on the little lots and that type of thing. Our neighborhood brings something different and special to the city because we appreciate our land. People want to have pools, they want to have gardens, but I just felt really disappointed that after all that we went through and we thought we had made our points, and I feel like if the developer was truly interested in what the community wanted, they would have listened to what we said the last time, and I felt like we were duped or tricked, because essentially they're getting their 58 homes to sell for $300,000 versus 61, which big deal, but we're losing our neighborhood and the aesthetics and the things that we appreciate, being able to walk our neighborhood. Most of us know our neighbors, and I just really, my main concern was the number of homes on the land causing more traffic. And it's just another cookie cutter neighborhood. And I feel like it will devalue our neighborhood. And I just wanted to voice that I was sincerely disappointed when I got this letter in the mail. Thank you.
That's all we have signed up, but you can certainly.
Okay, if there's someone else that wants to approach, just do it in an orderly fashion. Don't rush the podium, please.
Mike Bailey, 2500 Davis Road. I wasn't planning on speaking today because I knew this was already kind of pushed through in terms of, I knew it had to go towards the council, so didn't want to speak there. I do appreciate all you guys listening to us, even though it's, I wouldn't say a done deal, but it needs to go to the council. Couple questions. So with the cluster option, so I understand a little bit better, can the city council still deny that?
So this preliminary plat will not need to go to city council. The decision rests with the planning commission.
Okay, so I was under the wrong impression there.
Right, so yes, with recent changes to the subdivision ordinance, it's kind of like at the rezoning stage is the public hearing related to that, and the planning commission can be, they are the final decision body on the preliminary plat.
Okay, so
To
just to
add
get
a
this.
little bit to that,
Okay.
there was a change in the state law.
Hang on, Steve, let's be respectful
That
of
did that.
his 3
Well, no,
minutes.
I want to hear him.
There was a-
Because I don't know when the city voted on that, the change. So
think
was it
the-
at the state level or the city level?
The state law was changed, and the city voted on that with,
So I don't, to be clear, I don't think it was a specific state law change, but state law does require that certain plats be reviewed in a certain amount of time.
Right.
And if they're not reviewed in that amount of time, they're deemed approved. And the city was running up on difficulties making that time frame by having it go, have a rezoning happen, go to the planning commission, and then later go to city council. We were running up against that, and potentially subdivisions could have been approved without having that. So staff went and looked at areas around us, and kind of every locality handles it different. I came here from Augusta County. All subdivisions are done at the staff level. Others are just at the planning commission. And so after that review and bringing those requests before council at a public hearing in July, I believe, is when we held that public hearing. It was right when I started, June or July. It was decided by council that we would adopt that new process.
So the only way to get rid of the cluster provision, I guess, is to go to city council for a vote.
So the cluster subdivision option is allowed in RS-12, and I believe in other of our residential districts also.
But
In
by
order-
the state, right?
No,
Sorry to
it's a
cut you off.
city, it's a city ordinance.
Okay, so
in order
to-
to change it, it would either be, city council can always decide to change their ordinance. It could be a request by a citizen, a zoning text amendment that you take through a process, or it could be at the recommendation of the planning commission. But I will point out that it is the adopted ordinance today.
Yeah, and the only reason I came up here is so to educate people behind me, because they don't know, what they're thinking in their mind is, what's our next step here, right? Are you guys the last, the end-all be-all, or is it city council that's the end-all be-all? And so you've answered that question, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wants to come forward? Okay.
I'm Ingrid Meadows. I live at 600 Sumter Road. And I have to say, I feel like I've dodged a bullet. I do appreciate the sensitivity of the developer listening to what we had to say at the last meeting. I am still a little confused, though, about if it's R12, why isn't it being developed as an R12 division? But I guess that's a done deal at this point. Having lived in Reston for many years, I am familiar with, and I do appreciate the cluster concept because it does allow for open space. And fortunately for us in particular, the open space is near our house, and I do appreciate that. However, I still do think the density is too high for our neighborhood. The lots and the houses are too small. We don't know yet about any proposed style of these houses or how they'll be built, what their cost will be. I also would like to ask a specific question about the stormwater management areas, how they're constructed, what, I've seen some, even in Crozet, they're just horrific looking. So I'd like to know how those are going to be constructed and maintained. Let's see. All right, I do have a little bit of concern about the open space and the gathering space. I'd like some more detail on that as well from the developer. What I wouldn't like to see happen is a gathering space for teens, to hang out and make a lot of noise and all that kind of thing. So I'd like a little clarification on that from the developer.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward? I think we're good. So let me get my magic cheat sheet.
So the applicant can come back and address any of the
Okay.
questions.
Yeah, can we hear
If
more
they
about
would
the
like to.
gathering space? Are we talking about a park bench or like a gazebo? Yeah.
Okay, I think I still have my voice. Yeah, first thing I'll do is address Marshberg's question about the setback on the south side of Bellevue. Those lots are kind of unique in that there's a 10-foot public alley behind those lots. And I don't know where the fences are back there, but it's a 10-foot public alley. And then south of the public alley is where the 20-inch gas line is located. And based on the meets and bounds plat of record from Columbia Gas, that easement is 10.5 feet wide there. Now, they claim 25 feet on either side of the pipeline, but they haven't produced any documents that show that they have 50 feet. Needless to say, we've reserved a 25-foot strip from the gas pipeline itself south towards the back of the lots. In addition, we have another 10-foot buffer that we're volunteering to provide. So we have a 10-foot alley, probably 32 feet on the gas pipeline, and another 10-foot buffer inside of that.
So about
Does that
50 feet.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Just wanted to make sure because we know about the alley.
Yeah.
Are y'all going to survey again? Because when your surveyors were out
Hey.
there, it was very confusing.
Hey,
Where our fence is, it's not our property line.
Yeah, no, we have a handle on the boundary. We have to comply with state statute for precision on boundary surveys. Our guys, they've been doing this we have the same group, it's been about 15 years.
Can
they
he
got-
address the questions? This is an open
Oh,
question
yeah,
time.
okay,
Sorry, just,
okay.
just rules of order, sorry.
Yeah, we're fine. Okay, what was the other question that we had?
I wanted to know about this stormwater management.
Yeah, that's a good question. We have to comply with water quality and quantity on projects. That's by the current state stormwater regulations. As far as quantity goes, we have to make sure our pre-development runoff rates are less than, or our post-development runoff rates are equal to or less than our pre-development runoff rates. That has to do with water quantity, okay? The other thing we have to do is comply with the state's requirements for water quality. And that has to do, right now, they don't require nitrogen, that's just phosphorus removal. And the way we do that, a lot of times, there's different ways to do it, but what we foresee on this project is to use what they call a biofilter. I don't want to get overly technical on this, gentlemen here that understand what a biofilter is. Basically, what a biofilter is, when water comes into it, it comes into the surface, it's a level spreader, comes into the surface, and these biofilters are filled with what they call an engineered soil. It can vary in depth. It can be a level 1 or a level 2 facility. Level 1 is 2 feet deep with engineered soil. Level 3 is 3. The idea is this material is permeable, so when the water comes in, it goes down off the surface very rapidly, and then it goes into a perforated drain pipe below. So these facilities don't actually pond up water like you would see in a conventional detention pond. It comes in, you see it very briefly depending on the size storm, and it goes down. But these biofilters, the state requires us to plant those. You can have sprigs in them, a combination of shrubs, and actually you have some small trees that are typically planted around the perimeter. So when it's all said and done, it looks like a landscaped area. If they're constructed correctly, they work pretty well, actually. Okay?
How are you going to slow down traffic going down Davis? Because that's the
Okay, you can't really ask questions now, sorry. We need to really kind of stick to the rules of.
I have a summary of the question. So one was related to speed along Davis, and then the other was related to what the gathering space may look like.
What? Repeat the last thing?
The gathering space, like the communal
Oh,
area
yeah.
that's maybe in the center of the trails.
Yeah, the speed limit, that's a good question. We deal with that all the time. We're doing projects in Albemarle County, City of Charlottesville, Nelson County, Augusta County, Rockbridge County. Traffic, what you do to make people obey the law is that's a tough issue. You can make requests to VDOT, but they do their own thing, okay? The speed limits out there on Davis Road are 25 miles per hour. You can't make people drive the speed limit. It's unfortunate, but you can't do that. In terms of vehicles getting hit on the roadways out there, I'd encourage people when they can to park off the street, even though there's street side parking. Just park in the driveway and just avoid that problem. It's not only that, but the young generation now, they spend a lot, when you drive, you can drive down the road and look in the windows, and they're on their cell phones. They shouldn't be doing it, but they do it anyway, okay? So accidents happen in a hurry. Regarding the gathering space, I can let the developer speak to that, but we've done a lot of these. What we like to do is create an atmosphere for community interaction, and you can do that in a variety of ways. One thing that you can do is provide some seats, like there's a number of people in the community like to walk their dogs and go for walks in the evening. Have a place to sit down, and rest. So you can create an atmosphere where you have social communication at these gathering spaces. You can actually have a gazebo there, too, that gives you protection in a rain situation. And as far as this area, it's so huge, there's a lot of things that the developer could do. I mean, he could have some horseshoe pits in there. He could put cornhole, have some. Yeah, I mean, I don't know at this point, but he will do something in there, and we would be working with city staff to come up with a plan that we feel like fits the neighborhood. But the idea with this cluster development option is to encourage social interaction, not only in this new development, but in the existing developments. That's the whole idea behind it.
And is tonight the night we would approve the difference between a park bench and a gazebo, or does that come later in the plan review process?
Right. So at the end of Alice Ann's presentation, there was a list of some items that staff has gone back and asked them to look at, and are still awaiting some additional comments from maybe some other agencies, although we've had some internal conversations and perceived those to be minimal. So what staff is recommending is that the public hearing has been held, and that it would be, our recommendation is that it would be tabled this evening, and then staff could come back to you at next month's meeting to kind of identify all of the items that have been addressed. I will point out that staff has asked for some additional clarification on maybe what that is, that part of the improved common area that's in the circle, and is there some more information related to that? If staff feels that something comes in regarding that open space, could be potentially impactful, maybe something more active. If it's something more passive, like benches, and, I wouldn't see us holding another public hearing. It would just be coming back for your approval. If they were to propose something that staff believe to be more like active recreation, and I would say, maybe horseshoe and things to that nature, something more organized, if they were to propose something like that, we would err on the side of holding another public hearing, likely so that comment could be provided specific to that request.
I probably need to close the public hearing before we have more discussion.
May I ask him a question, please? There's been a reoccurring concern from the citizens that has said they feel the density is too high, the lots are too small, and they're not consistent with the neighborhood. Is there any room in the developer's mind to consider R12 instead of cluster development?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And what we did to evaluate these concerns, and this was done several months ago, is we took the house footprints of the local citizens, namely the adjoining property owners. We took their house footprints to see if they would fit on these lots in the cluster development, and they do. So the only really difference is the lot size itself. It's lot size itself, and there was a statement made at the last meeting that, people like big yards, but some of these folks I know are in the retirement age, and they've moved here for retirement. But there are a lot of retired folks that just don't want to mow grass. They want a small yard.
Sir, my question is there a consideration? Is there any room for consideration from the developer?
As far as I can tell, there is not a consideration for that.
Okay.
And the reason for it basically is this property is subject to development challenges, which is going to increase the cost of development.
I
So the
understand
cluster
business.
division was chosen so that they can actually provide more green space. That's the whole point behind it.
Okay.
Yeah, okay?
Great. Thank you.
Okay, so I think
I've got one more question. Someone had asked it earlier about the lot sizes are 50 by 90. What are, same question I asked about the other property. What size homes are planned to be built, and what's the price range of those homes?
Yeah, I will have to defer that to the developer, but the lot size that you mentioned is the minimum lot size. It's 4,500. The smallest lots on the layout are 50 by 90. That's 4,500 square feet. But there are a number of lots that are much larger than that. It depends on where they're located. Typically, a lot at the corner of intersection is larger. Lots around a curve are larger. Lots on the cul-de-sac are larger. And the lots down next to the Baileys on the south end are much, much larger. They're probably 3 times what they need to be. Some of that is just driven by the geometrics available to us on the property.
I've got one more question too after that. And that's about the stormwater impact or just water runoff. Because there's a lower part of that neighborhood, which I happen to live in, where there's a lot of water that does gather on Forest Drive too. It's not at the point where it flood any homes or anything, but there's a lot of water, and of course, Forest Drive and Bellevue sort of run together. It's almost like they.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just wondering how much impact will that be to some downstream or downstream.
Yeah, that is a very good question. You were not here in April, but we did address some of that then, but I'll just kind of summarize, basically. All of the development around this parcel was developed prior to the current stormwater ordinances, so they don't have stormwater detention or retention or biofilter. So when it rains hard, the water goes down Pratt's Run, and it goes down and floods the golf course down at, what's it called now, Orchard something?
Orchard Creek.
Orchard Creek, yeah. And I'm a golfer, so I know. I've been down there. But here's the deal. You can't change that because a lot of this development preceded the current city code and the current stormwater ordinance. But with this particular property, for example, the 4 acres that drains down Bellevue Road into our property, we will mitigate that runoff. So, and we're required by state statute and city regulations to meet the current stormwater management requirements. And that includes pre and post-development flow, includes meeting MS 19, which is adequate channel for discharge of the stormwater. So we have to meet all of those requirements. Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, so now I think I can close the public hearing. And it's sort of been put before us to table this situation until the next meeting. Does someone want to?
I'll make the motion that we table a vote on this until our next business meeting.
And I'll second that.
Everyone in favor of tabling
Was
the,
this the part where we discuss?
oh, I guess we can discuss, yeah.
I just wanted to say to everybody, like, the fact that, we wouldn't let him do it, the 7,000 square foot lots, and now he's absolutely got the right to do the 4,500 square foot lots, like that unfortunate consequence is not lost on me. I'm not going to speak for the rest of the council, but, yeah, that's got to hurt. Sorry about that.
Yeah, but your next meeting's going to be in a dark room. We're not going to have any input or hear what you have to say, so you can make your decision without.
What is,
Well, the decision's already made for us. I mean,
Yeah.
the by right subdivision.
But we can't hear your discussion.
So it will be, I mean, I'm saying there's no public hearing next month, but they will be
We'll have a meeting.
it's
You can
open
come
to the
meeting.
public. It's a public meeting.
Yeah.
So they're going to take all the information that you said and have a discussion and make a decision, but it is definitely open to the public.
Our room is often empty, it's not often dark.
And there'll be a public comment period at that time, too.
Okay.
If you want to make.
There's always an open public comment period on things not related to the agenda, so certainly anyone could come and say anything they would like again.
Okay, so now, any more discussion before we make a motion to table this until the October meeting? I think we have a motion and we have a second. Everyone in favor of tabling the issue at hand until the October meeting, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to number 7 on our agenda, review of minor subdivisions, final subdivision plats approved since the August 2nd, 2022 meeting.
and everyone's welcome to stay, but rest assured, the rest of the meeting will not be as this exciting.
No, the party really starts now.
There is no keg of beer at the end.
They're upset because there was a technicality. And they changed that, but it's not affect the subdivision.
Okay.
I was reading this is really close.
So we only have one for you this evening.
We just have one additional thing to review, and it's just.
Oh,
real
yeah,
quick.
we're waiting for somebody, I was waiting
Yeah,
for somebody.
sorry.
Yeah, go
Okay,
ahead.
We're all set.
I announced number 7, I was waiting for number 7 to happen, sorry.
Took me a minute to get it set up.
Okay.
But, we just have one for you this evening, so it'll be real
Okay.
Hey,
quick.
folks in the back.
We have a couple more things to finish, please.
So we only had one plat approval since the last meeting. This was for a final plat for the Evershire Section 4D, which was part of tax map number 24-3-1A. This is, of course, the Evershire subdivision located off of Ivy and Hopeman Parkway. This is the final section for this subdivision. It is the area that's kind of shaded. It's hard to see. But this area right here is the area that was reviewed and approved, the final plat. And this is a little closer look of the area. It's kind of hard to see, but this is the remaining townhomes in that last section of Evershire. So that was reviewed and approved by staff late August, I guess, was when that was approved. So that was. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but that was the only one this month.
Any other commissioners' business?
I'm
Yes.
good.
I think I've talked to all of you. My wife and I are in the process of moving to Ohio. We have a closing next week. And for our granddaughter, both parents working, so we become caretakers in some respect, and that's a wonderful thing to be able to do. But a couple other things I wanted to bring to your attention is that you'll need to obviously replace me, and hopefully you'll be able to do that quickly, but I'm also the Planning Commission's member of the Board of Zoning Appeals. So, and that goes to the courts, and the courts approve that. So you may also want to look at that, and as I pointed out earlier to some of the members, I've been on this maybe about 7.5 years on the BZA as well as the Planning Commission. We had one meeting of the BZA, the Board of Zoning Appeals. So, but y'all think about that. The Board of Zoning Appeals, if there's a question about the ordinances, the one we had was an individual wanted to build a 10-foot fence, and the ordinance only allowed an 8-foot fence, which after some discussion, we found that he was up against commercial property, so we made an exception for that. The issue was you may not have wanted to make an exception flat in the middle of residential properties, because that really changes the ordinances. But basically, we took and did something that applies to only that one situation, residential versus commercial. And, but it's something to think about. The one thing I did try to, and that's the zoning board, I had done those as an attorney for towns, and I always wrote a decision. Nothing fancy or anything, but so that they have a record of the thinking of the Board of Zoning Appeals on what they were doing. But that's something to think about. At the term, when you're appointed by the court, if I remember, is 4 years, and then they come back and can renew that. So suggest that one of you think about that, decide among yourselves what if there are a couple of you, how you want to do that. But it's interesting because it is kind of a judicial proceeding, but very, not with the judge banging a gavel or anything. You're just, you're discussing the issue they have.
Very judicial, non-judicial meeting.
Yes. But I enjoyed working with the Planning Commission here, all the planning commissions. This young lady is the one who's been here almost as long as me. I think she came on a year later.
I'm going to miss you by my right side.
I'll miss your fight against spot zoning.
There you go.
Is this called spot zoning?
But, no, it's been very useful, and as I mentioned to some of y'all, where I'm going, I noticed they were advertising for 3 planning commissioners and a Board of Zoning Appeals, so we'll see what I do. I might slide right in there.
For your time and your friendship. It's really been a pleasure serving with you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other?
If there isn't anything else from the commissioners, I just wanted to take a moment to say that Alice And has been promoted from our associate planner to the city's senior planner. And it's certainly well-deserved, as you could see tonight from all of her hard work on all of the presentations, so.
Absolutely.
That's great. We're
I
glad
hope
to
she
have
got a
you.
raise.
She did.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, absolutely.
Okay, so I think we can officially close the meeting. This was a big one.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're done for